Testing, testing, sound check from the lectern. Testing, can you hear me in the back?
I'll give you thumbs up. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gaurav Monga, and on behalf of the Director of Adaptation, Yusuf Nasif, and the UNFCCC Secretariat, welcome to the UNFCCC Pavilion. We have the great honor of having Kim Stanley Robinson today with us, one of the greatest science fiction living authors, winner of the Hugo and Nebula Awards. Time magazine named him Hero of the Environment. He's best known for his Mars trilogy and more recently the climate novel, The Ministry for the Future. Today he will read selected excerpts from The Ministry of the Future, a story that has shaped how many in the climate community think about climate risk, justice, and the bold action we need to take to secure a livable future. It speaks to directly what we're really trying to do here in Belém and at COP30. Please join me in welcoming Kim Stanley Robinson with a round of applause.
Thank you, Gaurav, for that kind introduction. Thank you to the sky gods and the Amazon. I live in a desert myself, so this is a very welcome sound. And I want to thank Yusuf, who can't be here, who has been my host at the two COPs that I've been at. So my idea here is I will read you some excerpts from Ministry for the Future, taking about 25 minutes. And then after that, I'd be happy to take questions and answer them briefly. And I'll get some help from that from Gaurav and a roving microphone. I think that describes the program. Ministry for the Future has 106 chapters, and I would like to read all of them to you, but that's 25 hours, and so I'm going to read for 25 minutes. So I think a 60-to-1 reduction is appropriate for this situation. All right, here we go. Be it resolved that a standing subsidiary body authorized by this conference of the parties is hereby established to work with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and all the agencies of the United Nations and all the governments signatory to the Paris Agreement to advocate for the world's future generations of citizens whose rights, as defined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, are as valid as our own. This new standing subsidiary body is furthermore charged with defending all living creatures, present and future, who cannot speak for themselves, by promoting their legal standing and physical protection. Someone in the press named this new agency the Ministry for the Future, and the name stuck and spread and became what the new agency was usually called. It was established in Zurich, Switzerland in January of 2025. And not long after that, the big heat wave struck India. I am a god and I am not a god. Either way, you are my creatures. I keep you alive. Inside, I am hot beyond all telling, and yet my outside is even hotter. At my touch you burn, though I spin outside the sky. As I breathe my big slow breaths, you freeze and burn, freeze and burn. Someday I will eat you. For now I feed you. Beware my regard. Never look at me. Babies crying at dawn, already hot. People hungry. Sun over the hills like a bomb, hot on the skin. Don't look that way or you'll be seen white all morning. Shadows running off the west edge of the world. It'll be that way until the tent roof blocks the glare, about 9. By then, it will be too hot to move. Better to sweat than not. Dust settles on the sweat and you can see little tracks of mud on your skin. Showers not till Saturday. I need that shower. The dining tent opens at 8, still lit by the horizontal light. Long lines of people at the entrance. People let the moms with little kids go first. Most people, anyway. They're stacked up next to the entry, line collapsing, fretting. Unless you're starved, it's easier to hang back, not to mention the right thing to do. After a while, it's just a habit. You go where you've gone before. The group of women I usually join is there trying to stay normal, talk. Inside, the smell of eggs and onion and paprika. Big bowls of plain yogurt, my favorite. Load up on that and hope to last till nightfall. Skip the trials of the midday meal. It's too much sorrow to go through the dining hall 3 times in a day. People are exposed there, fretting and anxious, hot and hungry, and bored. The same food, the same faces. Nothing else to do but eat. The aid workers are from some northern country. They talk among themselves. Some are quiet and serious, others laughing and animated. Clean. They sweat, but they're clean. I don't know where they come from. Sometimes I recognize faces, not just the handsome men, but a look. Something in their look will catch my eye long enough to impress that face on me. And after that, I can't help seeing them. Not that they see me. When they work the serving line, dishing out food onto our plates, they make eye contact and ask if we want what they're serving, but very few of them really see us in any way that would register on them. It's one way to do their job without getting too sad. Even so, they burn out pretty fast. Or maybe their deal is short. Either way, they come, they go. They aren't quite there, and they aren't really real. But it's important to refuse to get angry at them. You focused your feelings on what you can see. That's just the way people are. So there's a world out there of people who have put us in this camp. Not all of them specifically did it, but they're all part of it. They live in a world where this camp exists, and they go on. Anyone would. But it adds up to us being imprisoned here for nothing we've done except to live, just the way it is. People know we're here, but there's nothing they can do about it, or so they tell themselves. And in truth, it would take a lot of doing to release all the people incarcerated in this world. So they don't. They focus their thoughts elsewhere and forget about us. I would do that myself. In fact, I did do that myself. Only when things fall apart do you realize it can happen to you. You never think it can happen to you until it does. So then some of these people volunteer to come out to our camp and help feed us and do everything else that needs doing when you have 18,000 people stuck inside a fence unable to leave. Cleaning toilets, washing sheets, all that. And of course, feeding us. 3 meals a day, that's a lot of work. And yet, here they are. Most of them are young, not all, but it takes a certain idealism, and that's mainly a young person's feeling. They are almost all younger than me now, but not so long ago when I first came here, they were my age. And they learn things and see the world and meet other people like themselves and so on. And so they have to keep a distance from us. They have to, or else they would become as unhappy as we are. At their best, they are still indignant in our cause, and that's a stress on them. So they have to keep that distance. I know that. But I still hate them for not seeing me, for looking me in the eye while they put food on my outstretched plate and yet never seen me. I try not to, but I hate them, just as I hate everything else in this life. No one likes to feel gratitude. Gratitude is recommended by the clerics, but I say no one likes it. No one, not even the clerics. They go into their trade in order never to be in a position to have to feel it. They receive our gratitude as they receive our pain, but they never have to give gratitude themselves, or only in their professional capacity as our receptacles of feeling and of meaning, our representatives to God or whomever. No, I don't like clerics either. When the sun is far enough to the west that I can do it without being scorched, I walk out to the northern perimeter of the camp to look at the hills. I should be back in the tent where we teach the children, and I'll get there eventually, but first I come out here. The hills still remind me of my home hills where I grew up, even though these are as green as limes. There's a ridgeline that looks just like the one I used to look at from our town when I was a girl. In late spring, our hills would turn green also, not this wet green, but green enough, olive and forest green in a dapple of furzes. I look through the links of the fence, which is like any fence anywhere, but topped with rolls of razor wire. Yes, we are prisoners here. They don't want us getting any idea that we're not, by way of looking at a fence that could be climbed. As for the wire mesh itself, it looks weak, like you could cut it easily, not with scissors maybe, but with tin snips for sure. No problem. But we have no tin snips in this camp. So I lean against the wire mesh and I feel it bell out under my weight. The bottom of the wire is dug into the earth pretty far, I can see that. Once upon a time it might have been possible to dig it up to crawl under it with a spoon, or one's fingers even. But now the dirt has flowed together and hardened. It would take some effort to dig under it, and worse, some time. They would see me. Still, I consider it every time I come out here. At sunset when I'm here, I see the last of the sunlight pinking the ridgeline at the top of the hills, and I scuff at the dirt. No ever-widening disasters. Ever-widening disasters. It was clear that the worsening situation vis-a-vis carbon in the atmosphere meant that many of the developing countries, those which could least afford to cope with climate catastrophes, were now being struck by weather disasters on a regular basis. And these were perhaps the prime drivers in the human conflicts now breaking out everywhere. For those who held to that perception of ultimate causes, the Paris Agreement remained something to hold on to, however weak it was, to beginning to look relative to the crisis. The UN's climate negotiations had always made a strong distinction between developed and developing nations, with lists of each specified, and repeated injunctions made that developed nations were to do more to mitigate climate problems than developing nations could. Much of this call for climate equity was spelled out in Article 2 of the Paris Agreement. Clause 2 of Article 2 states, "This agreement will be implemented to reflect equity and the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities in light of different national circumstances. Article 9's Clause 1 repeats this principle. Developed nations are to assist developing nations. They can and should do more than developing nations. These were crucial clauses in the agreement. The text of these articles and their clauses had been fought over sentence by sentence, phrase by phrase, word by word. The delegates who had pushed hardest for the inclusion of these articles had given their all. They had spent years of their lives working for them. On the subway rides during summit meetings, they compared notes on divorces, bankruptcies, broken career paths, stress-related illnesses, and all the other personal costs accrued by throwing themselves so hard into this cause. Throwing yourself hard into this cause was a road to trauma. Were they fools to have tried so hard for words in a world careening towards catastrophe? Were they fools to keep on trying? Words are gossamer in a world of granite. There weren't even any mechanisms for enforcement of these so carefully worded injunctions. They were notional only. The international order of governance being a matter of nations volunteering to do things, and then when they didn't do them, ignoring the existence of their own promises. There was no judge, no sheriff, no jail, no sanctions at all. But what else did they have? The world runs by laws and treaties, or so it sometimes seems, so one can hope. The granite of the careening world held in gossamer nets. And if one were to agree that the world actually runs by way of guns in your face, as Mao so trenchantly pointed out, still, the guns often get aimed by way of laws and treaties. If you give up on sentences, you end up in a world of gangsters and thieves and naked force, hauled into the street at night to be clubbed or jailed or shot, especially in court. All these living beings added up to something like a poor and vulnerable developing nation. A huge one appearing inexorably over the horizon of time. These new citizens were young and weak, in many cases utterly helpless, and yet they had rights too, or should have rights, and under the Paris Agreement's equity clauses, which every nation had signed, one could argue that they had rights equivalent to those of a developing nation. And without quick and massive efforts from the Annex I nations, meaning the developed world, meaning the old, rich, colonialist countries, that giant new developing nation's development, even its very existence, looked less and less likely. So, the COP meetings had to keep insisting on equity as a fundamental value in policy, which meant that the subsidiary body, popularly known as the Ministry for the Future, should continue to be supported in full. Good. Possibly some of the richest 2% of the world's population have decided to give up on the pretense that progress or development or prosperity can be achieved for all 8 billion of the world's peoples. For quite a long time, a century or two, this prosperity for all goal had been the line taken. That although there was inequality now, if everyone just stuck to the program and did not rock the boat, the rising tide would eventually float even the most high and dry among them. But early in the 21st century, it became clear that the planet was incapable of sustaining everyone alive at Western levels, and at that point, the richest pulled away into their fortress mansions, bought the governments or disabled them from action against them, and bolted their doors to wait it out until some very poorly theorized better time, which really came down to just the remainder of their lives and perhaps the lives of their children if they were feeling optimistic. Beyond that, après moi le déluge. A rational response to an intractable problem, but not really. There was scientifically supported evidence to show that if the Earth's available resources were divided up equally amongst all 8 billion humans, everyone would be fine. They would all be at adequacy, and the scientific evidence very robustly supported the contention that people living at adequacy and confident that they would stay there, a crucial point, were healthier and thus happier than rich people. So the upshot of that equal division would be an improvement for everybody. Rich people would often snort at this study and then go off and lose sleep over their bodyguards, tax lawyers, legal risks, children crazy with arrogance, love not at all fungible, overeating and overindulgence generally, resulting health problems, ennui, existential angst. In short, an insomniac faceplant into the realization that science was once again right, that money could not buy health or love or happiness. Although it has to be added that a reliable sufficiency of money is indeed necessary to scaffold the possibility of these good things. The happy medium, the Goldilocks zone in terms of personal income, according to sociological analyses, seem to rest at around 100,000 US dollars a year, or about the same amount of money that most working scientists made, which was a little suspicious in several senses. But there it stood, data. And one can run the math. The 2,000 Watt Society calculated that if all the energy consumed by households were divided by the total number of humans alive, each would have the use of about 2,000 watts of power, meaning about 48 kilowatt hours per day. The society's members then tried living on that amount of electricity to see what it was like. They found it was fine. It took paying attention to energy use, but the resulting life was by no means a form of suffering. It was even reported to feel more stylish and meaningful to those who undertook the experiment. So, is there energy enough for all? Yes. Is there food enough for all? Yes. Is there housing enough for all? There could be. There is no real problem there. Same for clothing. Is there health care enough for all? Not yet, but there could be. It's a matter of training people and making small technological objects. There is no planetary constraint on human health. Same with education. So, all the necessities for a good life are abundant enough that everyone alive could have them. Food, water, shelter, clothing, healthcare, energy, education. Is there enough security for all? Security is the feeling that results from being confident that you will have all the things lifted above and your children will have them also. So it's a derivative effect. There can be enough security for all, but only if all have security. If 1% of the humans alive controlled everyone's work and took far more than their share of the benefits of that work, while also blocking the project of equality and sustainability however they could, that project would become more difficult. This should go without saying, except that it needs saying. To be clear, concluding in brief, there is enough for all. So there should be no more people living in poverty, and there should be no more billionaires. Enough should be a human right, a floor below which no one can fall, also a ceiling above which no one can rise. Enough is as good as a feast, or better. Arranging this situation is left as an exercise for the reader. Okay. Everyone knows me, but no one can tell me. No one knows me, even though everyone has heard my name. Everyone talking together makes something that seems like me, but is not me. Everyone doing things in the world makes me. I am blood in the streets, the catastrophe you can never forget. I am the tide running under the world that no one sees or feels. I happen in the present, but I'm told only in the future, and then they think they speak of the past, but really they are always speaking about now. I do not exist, and yet I am everything. You know what I am. I am history. Now make me good. Okay, lastly, very near the end. There are about 60 billion birds alive on Earth. They've been quicker than anyone to inhabit the rewilded land and thrive. Recall that they are all descended from theropods. They are dinosaurs, still alive among us. 60 billion is a good number, a healthy number. The great North Tundra did not melt enough to stop the return of the caribou herds to their annual migrations. Animals moved out from the refuge of the Arctic and repopulated the top of the world. In Siberia, they're establishing a Pleistocene park and reintroducing a resuscitated version of the woolly mammoth. This has been a problematic and even weird project, but meanwhile, the reindeer have been coming back there also, along with all the rest of the Siberian creatures, muskox, elk, bears, wolves, even Siberian tigers. In the boreal forests to the south of the tundra and taiga, wolves and grizzlies have prowled outward from the Canadian Rockies. This is the biggest forest on Earth, wrapping the world around the 60th latitude north, and all of it now being returned to health. It's the same right down to the equator, and then past the equator, past the tropics to the southern ends of the world. Certain inhospitable areas, inhospitable to humans, have always been almost empty of humans all along. Now these have been connected up by habitat corridors, and the animals living on these emptier lands are protected and nourished as needed. Often this means just leaving them alone. Many are now tagged, and more all the time. There is coming into being a kind of internet of animals, whatever that means. Better perhaps to say that they are citizens now and have citizens' rights, and therefore a census is being taken. Watersheds upstream from cities are adopted by urban dwellers who observe their fellow citizens from afar, along with making occasional visits in person. Wild animals' lives and deaths are being noted by people. They mean something. They are part of a meaning. Not since the Paleolithic have animals meant so much to human beings, been regarded so closely and fondly by we, their cousins. The land that supports these animals also supports our farms and cities as well, in a big network of network. What's good is what's good for the biosphere. There are fewer humans than before. The demographic peak is in the past. We are a little fewer than we were before, and on a trajectory for that to continue. People speak now of an optimum number of humans. Some say 2 billion, some others 4. No one really knows. It will be an experiment. All of us in balance, we the people, meaning we the living beings, in a single ecosystem which is the planet. Fewer people, more wild animals. Right now that feels like coming back from a time of illness, like healing, like getting healthy. It's the structure of feeling in our time. Population dynamics in play, as always. Maybe that makes us all living together in this biosphere some kind of a superorganism. Who can say? In a high meadow, wild sheep. Their lambs gambol about. When you see that gambling with your own eyes, you'll know something you didn't know before. What will you know? Hard to say, but something like this. Whether life means anything or not, joy is real. Life lives. Life is living. Thank you.
This has been such a privilege to listen. And thank you so much, Kim Stanley Robinson, for the inspiring reading. Thank you, everyone, as well, for listening in despite the thunderstorm. Maybe the weather wanted to contribute as well to the reading. Maybe, perhaps, it's also a reminder of the climate realities that are outside the blue zone, and for something that we need to think about as we are here in COP30. We have now a little bit time for some Q&A with Kim Stanley Robinson. So we have mics around, so please raise your hand. And I would request you to please kindly introduce yourself with your name and if you have any affiliation with with the organization you're with. Please, you can open the Q&A.
Congratulations on a fine book, and I think a real gift to all that we do. I've got 100 questions. I'll limit it to this one. You followed this book with your book on Sierra Nevada, something, I think you maybe even called it a love story. I don't recall. I'm curious what it meant to you to write about your beloved landscape, the Sierra Nevadas, after having written Ministry for the Future.
Well, thank you for that.
I'm to introduce myself. I'm sorry. I'm Lowell Bliss from Ontario, Canada, and I'm with the Christian Climate Observers Program.
Thank you. And thank you for that question. When I wrote the Ministry for the Future, I wanted to do a global novel about our global situation. That's a problem for the novel. And so I anchored it in Zurich, where my wife and I had lived when we were young, and it was a great joy to write about Zurich, and it's one of the strengths of this book that I didn't read anything from, but I can tell you when I was in Zurich, I read the Zurich chapters, and they appreciated it, and I loved it. But I myself am from California, and you know as well as I that these climate issues, these global issues are it's possible to get removed into a world of numbers and abstractions and lose one's sense of grounding. So you have to go home. And for me, in a very profound way, my home is the Sierra Nevada of California. I've spent about 2 years of my life up there in well over 100 trips. And I love it with all my heart. And able to write about that, I could also cope with the overwhelming amount of attention that Ministry for the Future got, and convince myself I was still writing, which I was. But nonfiction is easier to do in a scatterbrained way, if I may say so. There are probably many. In fact, everybody here probably writes nonfiction, and as great as it is, I myself found I was able to do it in a way that I was not able to write another novel, which I have not done since Ministry came out, and it's kind of disturbing, I have to admit. Then I think maybe there's something to generalize out of this to everybody, that we have this work that is global, international, and abstract, and difficult. And in fact, it's going to take everybody in this room, it will be the rest of your lives, including the youngest people, engaged in this enterprise. You need a refuge and a real place that feels like your home. And everybody's got a different one, but remember to go there when you get the chance. It's important to refresh your sense of what we're fighting for with that kind of contact with the earth. And indeed, even in this book, seeing wild bighorn sheep and seeing the goofy antics of the lambs as they bounce around playing for no other purpose except for joy, that is something everyone should see.
Great. The gentleman at the back.
Hi, I'm Peter Boyd. I teach at Yale University, and ever since Gonzalo Munoz was a guest lecturer, he set chapter 1 of your book, and we've enjoyed it ever since in class. which of the ideas, of which there are so many in your book, do you wish there were more capital, more startups engaged on, because they're great ideas that haven't got enough attention? And which of your ideas in your book would you rather were buried in fiction?
Yeah, thank you for that, and for both parts of it. Let's start with the negative first. I wish, like anything, that I had never mentioned the word blockchain. That was an error. I apologize. I do think that the world will be digitalized, money will be digitalized, that code matters, but blockchain is a energy-hungry and inefficient coding system that is now heavily implicated with the scam of Bitcoin. So blockchain itself is not a coding system. You have to remember I wrote the book in 2019. It's a mistake. On the positive side, I'll say that real climate finance using fiat money is a project that the Network for Greening the Financial System is involved with, and the IMF and the World Bank and many other banks, both central, public, and private, and international, are working on versions of the carbon coin, which has to be regarded as a symbol for any number of financial instruments that are more complicated but equally effective if we were to employ them. And given the lack of the 1.3 trillion a year that is on my fan that I should be waving right now, that it's not showing up, and there's reasons for that, and that the ordinary systems of funding, both private and public, are either too poor or too stingy to come through in the way needed. We do need something like the carbon coin, and I can just report that that feeling is shared widely, and people are working on it and may it come true faster. And then lastly, that project I wrote about in the book about sucking water out from underneath the big ice sheets of Antarctica to slow them down or even bring them to a halt, that's a real project that now has at least 2 or 3 nonprofits working on the experiments necessary. I'm associated with one of them, Ice Preservation Institute, a 501c3 in the United States, a nonprofit because nobody in this organization it wants to make money from it. It's simply a volunteer project between glaciologists, technologists, and a wide variety of engineers. So I kind of love that because they gathered effectively as a book club discussing this book, and then thought, well, let's do the Antarctic scheme or at least look into it. So that pleases me very much, and I join their meetings every Saturday morning at a very inconvenient hour for me personally. But it means a lot to me that something's happening there. And I gotta say that Slavek Tulicek, whose name checked in this novel, Slavek Tulicek is the glaciologist who noticed that the natural slowing of the Cam ice stream might be reproduced by humans as a technological intervention. And Slavek is part of this group too. So it's one of those nice loops in between fiction and reality that I'm proud of, but also happy to see it happening. It would be great if we could stabilize West Antarctica. I'm just saying, if you like the beach, we're talking 4 meters of sea level rise in a couple hundred years if we don't tack that ice sheet down. And if we can, we should, because a 4-meter sea level rise will be a crushing blow for our descendants. So fingers crossed on that one.
So we have time for 2 more questions only. So maybe we'll start with the lady and then the gentleman in the front.
Thank you, Kim. Such an honor to read your book. I'm a Representative Andrea Romero from New Mexico. I'm a state legislator. So in the policy space, I appreciate the previous question on how to finance some of the opportunities that may exist. On the policy agenda, and even in democracy, we know that our leaders continue to be transient. When you talked about having to wake up today and continue the work until we are no longer on this earth, are there some policy pieces in your book that we can all take from as a policy agenda? I have some of my own from the things that I've been touting from your book as a policymaker, but where would you start?
Well, I appreciate that very much, and I've been in contact with state legislatures in California. I'm from California. I'm proud of California. It is a progressive state that is facing up to climate change, and I will speak as a Californian that we're going to drag the rest of the U.S. back into the Paris Agreement and into sane behavior. Go California. So it's nice to see legislation that is targeted, and of course climate finance, which I've already talked about, is I think the crux of the issue. And you need public money because the $1.3 trillion per year, it's only 1% of the world's economy, but it's it's way more money than any individual billionaire owns. We fetishize our billionaires, but they themselves only say they only have $500 billion. That's only half what we need every year. And they're not inclined to give it all away for 6 months' work. So it needs to be public money, and that's where it gets interesting for legislatures. We talk about quantitative easing, that would be the central banks doing it on their own recognizance to stabilize money. Legislated money, like the IRA bill, somewhat lamented, but the good that it described can be brought back, and some of it got implemented. Legislated money that has been gathered from taxes and paid out by legislatures is crucial stuff. So I would say, in terms of policy, funding experimental projects, research projects, implementation projects, and simply carbon drawdown projects at the state level, all state levels, is the thing I've been focused on ever since, and I think we all should be, because in this world, it is a money question. We're going to need to pay for the human work, the infrastructure, the land to complete these projects. So that's what I would focus on. I want to say before the last question that I'm going to end my answer with a half-page reading that I feel is a benediction to send you out on, because it's somewhat about you all. So I'll answer this last question, but, well, I'll make the transition. You'll see, I'll start reading.
Okay, I am CVC's Rex Imojiti Anigoro from Nigeria. I'm a pan-Africanist from the New Black Movement, and I'm from Delta State, Nigeria, where the coastal area of Nigeria. Now, very curiously, I don't know, your book, how does it resonate with the Pan-African views? How does it amplify the African narrative? How do we Africans, Nigerians, relate to this book, and how do we make it something that the younger generation, the future, can read about and then see a reality of it, and not just as an elitist or material that does not relate to their issues? I don't know, how do you pull all this together?
Well, thank you for that.
Voice.
Thank you for that, and I'm pleased to have a beginning of a response, which is one of the 106 chapters in this book. It describes the taking over of a slave labor operated mine in Central Africa. I think it gets described eventually as Namibia, but really it could be anywhere in Africa. And it turns out to be an armed division of the African National Congress. I may have made up new names for it, but it's a pan-African group that simply comes in, liberates, and nationalizes this mine. For Africa's good, not for China's good, or not for international capital's good. I don't know which the chapter number is. I can't quote chapter and verse. It's there. I put it in there on purpose to discuss this very problem of the exploitation of Africa, one of the biggest continents, one of the most exploited, not only in historical time, but now, and with so much sunshine, so many people, so much energy. And my friend Solomon Assefa, Ethiopian working in South Africa, taught me a lot, and he would be proud of me for, I met him after I wrote this book, so I thought of it before, but I was pointed out to me by Solomon that I had done a good thing there. So I reference you to that chapter. There's many other chapters in here. Some of them are, you might say they are violent because there is violence in them. And sometimes I'm going to say that a little armed resistance may be necessary if you are being exploited by wicked people. And I'll leave it at that. And I'm kind of glad that the Ministry for the Futures, the discussion of it has gone from the violence that the book describes in a revolutionary sense or even an eco-terrorist sense, the first 6 months after the book came out, that was all people talked about. Oh my God, a white American bourgeois writer talking about violence for good. How could it be? Well, that was before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That was before Gaza. I wrote it in 2019, and when the book came out in 2020, it was a sense of, oh, what dismay. There might be troubles in this world so extreme that they will lead to violence. Now people read the book more than ever before, and the violence in the book looks, let's just say, realistic. So, and I don't want to end on that particular note because there's other things going on, and so I'm going to end with this, which luckily it takes only a half page. But think about this as a benediction going out and a description of what you might be up to as a project. The Hebrew tradition speaks of those hidden good people who keep the world from falling apart. The Zarakim Nistarim, the hidden righteous ones. In some versions, they are 36 in number and thus are called the Lamadvad Zadikim, the 36 righteous ones. Sometimes this belief is connected with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and God's promise that if he could be shown even 50 good men in these cities, and then 10, and then 1, he would spare them from destruction. Other accounts refer the idea to the Talmud and its frequent references to hidden, anonymous, good actors. The hidden quality of the Nistarim is important. They are ordinary people who emerge and act when needed to save their people, then sink back into anonymity as soon as their task is accomplished. When the stories emphasize that they are 36 in number, it is always included in the story that they have been scattered across the earth by the Jewish diaspora and have no idea who the others are. Indeed, they usually don't know that they themselves are one of the 36, as they are always exemplars of humility, anava. So if anyone were to proclaim himself to be one of the Lamed Vav, this would be proof that actually he was not. The Lamed Vav are generally too modest to believe that they could be one of these special actors. And yet this doesn't keep them from being effective when the moment comes. They live their lives like everyone else, and then when the crucial moment comes, they act. If there are other secret actors influencing human history, as maybe there are, we don't know about them. We very seldom get glimpses of them, if they exist. They may just be stories we tell ourselves, hoping that things might make sense, have an explanation, and so on. But no, things don't make sense like that. The stories of secret actors are the secret action. Thank you.
This has been such an inspiring session. Thank you once again, Kim Stanley Robinson. One more round of applause, please. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming. And we hope to see you again in future COPs and hope to see you soon.